We pick up with the Missouri Compromise here in 10.3. We are going to get to the discussion of the various treaties, but the Missouri Compromise is not really a treaty because it's not with another country. It's about our own country. And so with the Missouri Compromise, we're going to cover these points here. Basically, when is it, who's involved, and the important points of it. Let's begin with the last one. Why was it needed? Well, America is growing, and that's a good thing. We're moving further west. But as America continues to expand, it continues to need to balance the slave number of states with the free number of states. So the idea is that we have to keep that balanced even. So one side does not have an advantage over the other. So as the country continued to expand west, that balance needed to be kept in check. So in 1820, the territory that was Missouri is ready to become a state. And when I say that, it means that it had reached the population number necessary to petition Congress to enter the Union. This is going to create a problem because it's going to throw the balance of equal number of states off. And so here enters Henry Clay to come up with a compromise to deal with this crisis. So we'll move to the next slide here and talk about the basics of when. So the Missouri Compromise happens in 1820, okay? And the basic points of it are just three main points. So we know it's about Missouri, and Missouri is going to enter as a slave state, okay? So now we need to have a free state, and luckily in 1820, one of the states towards the east that most kids tend to think that might have been an original 13 colony is also ready for admission to the Union, and that would be the state of Maine. So Maine is going to enter as a free state, Missouri is going to enter as a slave state, but what Clay does is approach the larger issue of how to break up and divide that large area of territory that was the old Louisiana Purchase. And so what he gets accomplished is he gets the Senate and the House to agree to banning slavery north of a certain line in that territory. And that line is going to be the 36 degree, 30 degree of latitude. Okay, let me show you on a map. It makes some more sense. So what happens here in this agreement is the first part, Maine's admitted in 1820. Okay, so that's free state. So now you have to admit a slave state. And so less than a year later, I know it looks like a full year, you have the second part of the compromise come into effect. Missouri enters as a slave state. You can sort of see that down here with the various colors. Okay, and then the last part of the compromise is they draw this line that I asked some of you to draw on your map, this Missouri Compromise line. So from here over, now anything west of this in this area, folks, is Mexican territory. It's not American. So basically he says everything south of this will be eventually a slave state. So let's say Arkansas Territory, okay? That's going to be turned into Arkansas, which of course is going to be a slave state. But everything north of this, meaning surrounding the state of Missouri, is going to be possibly free states. That's the compromise that was worked out, known as the Missouri Compromise, or the Compromise of 1820. Okay. Now we move into the standard various treatments and treaties that were talked about in this section. And so some of the lines on the map and issues get dealt with. So the Rush-Bagot Treaty is in 1817, and that is with Great Britain. Now, there's three of them. Two of the three are going to be with Great Britain because obviously Great Britain is one of our bordering countries at the time. You have British Canada. So what happens in the Rush-Bagot Treaty is that it's named for Sir Charles Bagot. He's the British representative, and the American one, sorry, I don't have a picture of him, is a guy by the name of Richard Rush. So that's why it's called the Rush-Bagot Treaty. And it deals with disarmament along the Great Lakes and on the Great Lakes. So let me show you. So there we see our Great Lakes. Okay. Now, this is the area where they want to disarm, meaning they want to take the ships and the various fleets from both the American and the British side and disarm, meaning remove them from the lakes. Well, the problem is the only way you're going to do that is literally pull them out of the lakes and dismantle the ships. And that's exactly what both sides agree to. Since we are no longer really warring and we want to kind of decrease tensions and things like that, the various fleets that were on those lakes need to be taken care of. And so that's what this treaty dealt with, disarming the area of the Great Lakes. Up here, remembering your basic thing to remember it with is the words HOMES, H-O-M-E-S, stands for Huron, okay, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and then Superior. So drop that one tonight at dinner. All right. So the next one is the Convention of 1818 that some of you had problems finding. This again is with Great Britain, and this one's a little bit more important because it does start actually creating some lines on the map. The first line on the map is it sets the official border between the United States and British Canada, I should have it, at the 49th parallel. Okay. If we look up here, do you see the words Convention of 1818? So that nice straight line that we share with much of Canada, excluding, of course, the Great Lakes area, that came about in 1818 with an agreement just simply known as the Convention of 1818. All right? So the 49th parallel is a line of latitude. Okay? It's a line that runs just like this one, east-west. So the other parts of the Convention of 1818, again, they demilitarized that border. So where we had demilitarized the Great Lakes, now they're demilitarizing the border between Canada and the United States, where there is no water. So that means a reduction of the number of military. You don't really see military, you just see border patrol and those type of things. And last but not least, Convention of 1818 also deals with an entirely different area, and that was that area of Oregon country. So if we look at a map here, this area over here is where both the United States and Great Britain wanted to get their people in so they could claim this area. And so in the Convention of 1818, it opens up Oregon country to what we call joint occupation. So that says Americans can come in and British people can come in. Now the difference is Americans are already over to this sort of area here, and it's a jumping off point that you guys will know as the Oregon Trail. The British don't have as much of a designed and laid out kind of trail to get into that area. So over the next 20 to 30 years, you're going to have 10 to 20,000 Americans flow into Oregon country, and you're going to have less than 1,000 people of British Canadian descent into the same area. All right. Last but not least, the Adams-Onis Treaty is named after this man, John Quincy Adams, okay? And I think his name was Juan Onis for the Spaniards. So John Quincy Adams is our Secretary of State, a very educated, very experienced diplomat. Even going back to his teens, his dad, yes, was John Adams. So when John Adams was second president of the United States, the person that he towed along all throughout Europe was this guy, John Quincy Adams. So he was fluent in like 3 or 4 languages. French by the time he was 14. He also spoke a little Russian because he spent time there. A really, really smart guy. So the problem is that he has to work out a treaty because of the actions brought on by a completely different person. And that completely different person is the guy on your $20 bill, Andrew Jackson, who actually invades part of East Florida, chasing some Seminole Indians, and in the process ends up hanging a bunch of British people. So he makes this international incident with the Spanish and the British and a bunch of Indians in that area. So that brings up this treaty that we actually, meaning the United States, gains both East and West Florida. So here you could sort of see East Florida, and then the Panhandle area over here known as West Florida. So America had already taken parts of it earlier from the Spanish as we kind of moved in, and that was under a contested area. But now officially Spain gives us West Florida and East Florida. And they give it to us with the understanding that America gives up claims to Texas. So if you're thinking, wait a second, I didn't think Texas was ours. It was not. But there were people hoping to claim portions of what today would be Texas, East Texas, as part of the old Louisiana Purchase. But basically we agreed in writing that we would give up those claims if we got Florida. And then finally, they also deal with the agreed upon line between the areas of land on the 42nd parallel. So let me show you that. So up here, you see this nice red line? This is the Adams-Onis Treaty line, as it says right here. So it officially creates the border between the United States and Spanish Mexico. So here, since they draw the line, they're out of the Oregon country business. They're no longer claiming that area, wanting that area. Okay? And you can sort of see some of the areas ceded by the United States. This is more of a wish, because a lot of these areas were sort of like right through here. but then we sort of moved the line back and gave it back to Spanish Mexico. Okay. Now, there's that 42nd line of parallel. Okay, it's a line of latitude, and it is still on our map right there. You can sort of see it as the northern border of California, Nevada, and Utah. That's the old Adams-Onis Treaty line. The last thing I want to talk about is this issue of international events known as the Monroe Doctrine. So this is a political cartoon. It says, what's the message here in the image? Well, clearly this guy is not Abraham Lincoln. No, this is Uncle Sam, which is usually a stand-in for anything representing America. And so you can see Uncle Sam has thrown his hat. You can sort of see the stars and stuff right down here into what is Central and then South America. And so what he's trying to do is give this image that, hey, he's kind of making a message to these people over here. And these would be the old world of Europe, but more specifically a group of 4 different countries that are trying to control, kind of bring their people and their empires back under control here in South America. So I'll put it back down there. So this is the Monroe Doctrine. It basically says it's a foreign policy statement directed to European powers. And that statement is, do not attempt to crush any independence movements in the Western Hemisphere. So in your reading, you read about various revolutions here in Central America and South America. Countries like Ecuador and Colombia and all those areas begin to break away from their old European mothers and fathers, if you want to think of it. Just like we had done in the 1780s, they're doing in the early 1800s. And what we said was, hey, don't come over here with your large armies and try and crush that. This is, let them go. It was a pretty bold statement by the Americans. So it's directed towards Europeans, and it dealt with, more specifically, the Western Hemisphere. We told the Quadruple Alliance. Remember that picture that showed the 4 people? Well, the Quadruple Alliance would be the countries of France, Austria, Russia, and Prussia that were attempting to reestablish their colonies in South America. Now, we told them don't do that because we, as America, would take that as a threat to our peace and safety. And we did that in 1823. Kind of a bold statement to do, even though we didn't have the military power to back it up. So this is where we are, sort of in the early 1820s. We're going to end it here before we move into the Age of Jackson.